Hello, welcome back to my garden and to my YouTube channel. This week's video is this piece behind me. It's something that I would ordinarily not paint, but there's just something about it. I saw it in a charity shop a couple of weeks ago and I walked away because I was like, no, I don't need it. I've got enough pieces of furniture in storage. I've got 3 storage units, by the way. So I walked away, I don't need it. But there's just something about it. I like the detail there. It's just cute and quirky, and I thought it just deserves a better life. So I went back and got it the next day. I've got a weak spot for furniture, okay? Some call it an addiction, some call it a weak spot. I'm going with weak spot. Anyway, here it is. It cost me £7.95, less than a tenner, and I'm going to transform it into something a little bit more colourful with a colour that I've never used before. So as you can see, this has got like a factory finish on it. Sorry about the dogs barking in the background. This is the problem with working outside. There's always something going on. But this is a factory finish. So this is probably made out of like pressboard, MDF, chipboard, I don't know. But it's not like a solid wood piece, if that makes sense. So just because it has this factory finish on it, it doesn't mean that it's not paintable. It definitely, everything is paintable. You just need the right products to be able to paint it. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is clean it because it is a little bit grimy. So I'm going to do that first. So I've got White Lightning, which is a granulated cleaner mixed with water in here. And that's what I use for smaller pieces like this. You can just spray it on and give it a rub with a microfiber cloth. That's going to make sure it's nice and clean. Before I can clean, I've just got to take off the price tag, and I left it on just to show you evidence that I did pay £7.95 for this. And I'm just going to pop that there. I don't know why I did that. I'm clearly in a very silly mood because I'm dancing while I'm cleaning furniture. So, as well as Dixie Belle selling the granulated version of White Lightning, they have also just released a pre-mixed version because a lot of people were requesting it. So if you don't want to buy the granulated version and mix it yourself, you can now buy a pre-mixed version in a spray bottle that is ready to use. And I will link both versions in the description below, and you can shop for either. So obviously I'm going to clean it all over. I also am going to clean the inside of these drawers because I plan on painting those as well. And Dixie Belle's White Lightning cleaner is one that you need to rinse off, so just make sure once you've cleaned it all over you give it a really good rinse. I'm going to be changing the handles. The original ones were glued in place, so I'm just going to tap them with a hammer. That's going to loosen them so that I can remove them. So we're down here. The problem with factory finishes is that when you pick them up secondhand, they can often be imperfect, and it's not as easy as just sanding out that imperfection. It is sometimes, but it just depends on the finish. There's some dents and chips to the factory finish here. I don't know if you can see them. We can zoom in when I'm editing. So as you can see, I could sand that smooth, but then that would create another problem because what's under here is probably like chipboard or something very inexpensive. It's not going to be solid wood or a wooden top like it is if you picked up something that was maybe made out of oak or pine. So I don't really want to sand that because if I expose that MDF or whatever it is under there, it's going to be a pain. It doesn't absorb water very well, and it just creates problems. So I'm going to fill that in and then sand that smooth. I'm using Dixie Mud to fill the dents in the top. There's only a couple, so it's going to be absolutely fine for this type of work. And what I really don't want to do is try my best to sand through that existing finish because, as I said, it's not real wood under there, and sometimes things like MDF just doesn't paint very well because as soon as it starts absorbing water, it can swell and give you like a lumpy bumpy finish. So I'm actually going to try and keep as much of that factory finish as physically possible without breaking that original finish. So I've just sanded it smooth once the Dixie Mud was completely dry. I'm just using a 220 grit sanding sponge, and that just gives you a really nice smooth finish. And then I'm going to start using a specialist primer. Now this is the primer that you're going to use when you've got a really slippery, shiny, slick finish like this factory finish. Ordinarily, if I use paint on top of this, it's just going to flake off. Here's a little tip for you as well. If you are painting on a table or any surface, pop a little paper plate underneath each leg. That way you're not going to get paint on the surface of your table. And I'm doing this outside because I'm trying to prove a point. You don't need a fancy workshop to be able to upcycle furniture. You can literally do it outside on your garden furniture, like I'm doing. So, like I said, the Bonding Boss, as it is now, it used to be called Boss, it's now called Bonding Boss. This is the primer that is going to transform pieces like this that already have a factory finish. It also allows you to paint things like metal, glass, plastic and laminate. So what you're going to need to do is apply a couple of coats of this, leave it to dry thoroughly in between coats, and then your final coat you need to leave for 24 hours before you apply paint. And that's the important bit, because this is a water-based product and it needs that drying time. So another little handy tip for you here is when you are painting legs or spindles, is get a very small amount of product on your brush. You don't want this dripping in product because it's going to cause problems. And then use left to right kind of slappy motions to get around the spindle, and that reduces drips and pooling when you are painting round surfaces like this one. So you can sand in between layers of Bonding Boss. This is me just sanding a little bit of imperfection on the original factory finish down that I managed to miss when I was prepping it. So I'm just sanding that smooth, and then I like to go over the piece once it's completely dry with a 220 grit sanding sponge, and that is just going to make sure that any kind of little bits in the primer or any bits of texture that you might have accidentally got are going to be smoothed out before you apply your second coat of primer. So once you've waited 24 hours for the primer to completely dry, you can tell this is a different day because the sun's in a different position. I didn't cheat and just fast forward it. Trust me, you do not want to rush the drying time of Bonding Boss, because that is when it does its job. So this is 24 hours later, and I'm going to use this colour. Now, I said at the start of the video, I've never used this colour before. That's a little bit of a lie. I have used it on part of a project. I just haven't used it on an entire piece before. So this is going to be painted in a one colour finish. I'm going for a kind of funky, modern, quirky, kind of eclectic look. More is more in the case of this, because I just feel like this little cabinet needs a little bit of colour and a little bit of bold quirkiness. So this paint is from the Silk All-in-One Mineral Paint from Dixie Belle, and it is called Prickly Pear. So with Silk, it has a built-in top coat. Now that is going to be absolutely perfect for me because I don't want to top coat this, but if you want to top coat you can. It's just that it has one built in, and once it has dried it is extremely durable. The colour that I chose for the inside of the drawers is a little bit of a colour clash situation going on, because why not? The drawers needed to be painted because they're a little bit grubby, so I'm choosing the colour Florida Orange, and this is going to need to be top coated because this is from Dixie Belle's Chalk Mineral Paint range. Okay, so I've actually had to set up my tripod in my kitchen, on my kitchen table, just to prove a point that you don't need a fancy workshop to paint furniture, because it's actually really hot outside. It's, I don't know what the temperature is, but it's hot, and my garden is in direct sunlight, so it's not the best painting in direct sunlight because your paint dries super quick before you can do anything with it. And obviously I want this to be kind of a smooth finish. So the good thing if you're using chalk mineral paint is that you can add water to it, or you can spritz your surface and your brush or your paint with water, and it's absolutely fine. But with silk, when you add too much water to silk, you start to break down the properties of silk, like the built-in top coat and the stain blocking primer and all the other benefits that are built into silk. So for that reason, I'm moving inside. As well as sanding in between my layers of primer, I'm also going to just give this a quick once over in between my layers of silk, and then I'm going to repeat the second coat in exactly the same way as the first, and that is as simple as it gets. I forgot to press the record button when I was top coating the inside of the drawers because clearly the heat has made me insane, but I also opted for some really quirky handles. So you're either going to love them or you're going to hate them. This is them, zebra print, because why not? So here's a little close-up of that punchy colour. It's absolutely amazing. I can't believe I haven't used it sooner. There's a little glimpse of the orange draw inners, and here's the final piece. Thank you for watching the video, as always. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you next time.